Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and today on Record All Monsters, Conga, Mad Scientists, and the Return of Giant Monkeys.
Fantastic. There's a huge monster gorilla that's constantly growing to outlandish proportions loose in the streets.
Who doesn't love a good giant monkey movie? Now, Conga is not a good giant monkey movie, but it is one of my favorites. There's so much ridiculous stuff happening, and that audio clip we just heard sums it up nicely. The only thing I'd add is that there's also an old-school mad scientist in this movie. Conga is the first of 4 giant monster movies that we'll be talking about from 1961, 2 of which, including this one, are from England. I call this the first kaiju boom, and it represents giant monster movies becoming a full-blown phenomenon. Ironically, while Japan only had one entry in 1961, beginning the next year with King Kong vs. Godzilla, Japan, and Toho Studios specifically, would come to dominate the genre. Conga is unique among giant monster movies up to this point because it embraces a science fiction and horror movie trope that we haven't seen a whole lot up to this point, the mad scientist. Conga is an extremely derivative movie, just look at its name, but it brings a sort of outlandish creativity in the face of a deadly self-seriousness that I just adore. In addition to that, while its plot could be from a Bela Lugosi starring Monogram cheapie from the 40s, everything about the film's aesthetic is painfully late 50s, early 60s, which is another great source of joy for me. I usually try to refrain from just summarizing a movie in this section, but the details of Conga's plot are too deliciously ludicrous to pay no mention to, especially since my thesis on this film is that it is doing something truly unique in the history of giant monster movies at this point, by having an honest-to-goodness mad scientist. So, here's a quick overview of what happens in Conga. Botanist Charles Decker's plane crashes over Uganda and he is presumed dead. A year later, he returns to England with a pet chimp named Conga and secret knowledge from a native doctor that will allow him to grow certain plants and maybe even complex living creatures like animals to outlandish sizes. Animals like Conga. His housekeeper/lab assistant/secret lover, Margaret, agrees to help so long as he marries her after the experiments are complete. He agrees to the conditions with no intention to honor them, as he is eyeing a Sandra, one of his grad students, to be his new housekeeper/lab assistant/secret lover. The dean of Decker's college refuses to give him funding for the outrageous experiment, so Decker has Conga kill him. And then he has him kill a few other people. When Margaret discovers his intention to replace her, the woman firmly rejects Decker's advances, by the way. She gives Conga a heaping helping of the growth serum and encourages Conga to kill his owner. He kills her instead, then goes on a King Kong-style rampage, holding Decker in his hand before being shot to death in front of Big Ben. Decker in no way resembles a doll during this scene, and ever since Conga got all big and murdery, he has ceased to be a chimp and has become a man in a saggy gorilla suit. It's the stuff that dreams are made of, kids. Up to Conga, there haven't been any actual mad scientists in our history of giant monster movies. This point has been contested, but there have been shades of the mad scientist in Godzilla's Dr. Serizawa with his oxygen destroyer. But he turned out to be a heroic character, less of a Dr. Frankenstein and More of a Frankenstein Jr., except not a robot. The scientist in Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, the giant behemoth, and even the giant claw never quite crossed the line beyond mildly eccentric and into real madness. As a matter of fact, especially in Behemoth, they almost seem reasonable given everything that's going on. Dr. Deckard would have been played by Boris Karloff if this movie had been made 15 or 20 years earlier. There's nothing reasonable about him. More than any movie we've seen yet, this is science run amok. I mean, science is running amok in all of these, but it is extremely amok here. And that is because of our mad scientist. In the American giant monster movies, we see radiation and nuclear weapons treated as a monster maker, but also a savior. In Beast, Behemoth, and the Giant Claw, the monster is defeated by a magical radioactive bullet. There's more detail and nuance there, but that's essentially the fact. So the mad scientist would be counterproductive in this kind of narrative. Our view of scientific advancement needs to be bolstered and propagandized. Having a heroic scientist instead of a mad one does just that. If you remember back in our episode on Rodan, we talked about Ishiro Honda's upbringing and how he grew up respecting scientists and doctors in part because of his military medic brother. Since he had such a strong hand in shaping the genre in Japan and eventually around the world, the lack of mad scientists in his films makes sense. As a matter of fact, before Honda rewrote the screenplay for the original Godzilla, Serizawa was a mad scientist who lived in a Gothic castle and dressed all in black. Mad scientists come back around later, but for the most part, giant monster movies are the home of the heroic scientist. So Konga's a swing and a miss on that front. But I still want to recommend it for the sheer ridiculous spectacle.
Konga, born of a scientist's dreams, bred on a madman's nightmares, brought out of the jungle and turned into a wild beast beyond man's understanding.
I am your master, and you must obey me. Now you no longer have any fears.
Starring Michael Gough as Dr. Decker, who stole the jungle's secrets of sorcery to distill Satan's black magic in his own laboratory. Margot Johns as the girl who becomes an accessory to murder, with Claire Gordon as the young student. Trapped with a madman in a nightmare world of fear, jealousy, and passion.
Let me go! Thunder, you know I love you!
The jungle scene of color, excitement, and spectacle is thrillingly mixed with the close mystery of strange insectivorous and carnivorous plants. See them, fear them, and feel the anger and the anguish of Jess Conrad in a picture charged with powerful emotion. Konga, the most fantastic beast of all time. Not since King Kong has a screen exploded with such mighty fury and spectacle. In the new process of spectramation and Eastman color, he grows in size and terror before your eyes. In a film that fills the screen with giant entertainment.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly. Welcome back to Record All Monsters. We're lucky enough to have a returning guest with us today, our monkey movie correspondent of the band, the Oh Hellos, and my personal friend, co-worker, Nathaniel Ross Smith. Nathaniel, welcome back to Record All Monsters.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we were watching a little movie called Konga tonight. And just what... We've both watched this before.
I watched it actually the first time maybe like a year ago or something. One day we were talking and you brought it up, and then it played on Turner Classic Movies like the next night.
That's right.
So I recorded it and I was like, oh yeah, I'm watching Konga.
That's right. And we had you on our first episode ever, which was about King Kong. And Conga was one of the movies mentioned in the game we played that night, Ape
Right.
and the Apes,
Right.
which we had discussed not that long before, and I had forgotten that we had talked about.
Yeah, right. You're the reason that I know about Conga. Yeah.
Oh, I love this movie. Let's go over some statistics before we get into why. That's
Sure.
another thing that we've added since the last time you were on.
Okay.
I give the basic information about the movie now.
Cool.
It was directed by John Lamont, produced and written by Herman Cohen with Abden Candle, and it stars Michael Goff, Margot Johns, Claire Gordon, and Jess Conrad. Jess Conrad is billed above Claire Gordon, but he's not
Yeah.
in it a lot.
He kind of whines and then gets killed. Is that the boyfriend, I'm guessing?
Yes, it's the boyfriend. He was a Broadway actor, apparently.
Huh, okay. Was he
Not,
actually...
not Broadway,
Oh,
West End. West
okay.
End.
I was going to ask, is he actually British? That makes sense.
West End, and he originated the role of Birdie in Bye Bye Birdie for the British stage.
Huh, cool.
And that's the only notable thing about him.
Yeah,
that I could
gotcha.
find.
Well, I feel like that's fairly notable. So he's got Conga and he's got that. So
Yes.
that's more than I can say.
Just a couple of little notes, and we'll see where this takes us through the conversation. First of all, what did you said you saw Conga about a year ago, after we had been discussing it at work. What was your impression at the time?
I enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's like right up my alley is all those kinds of movies. It's like, when we were watching it this time, we were kind of talking to, it's like, it's obviously very silly. It's a very silly movie, and there's like so many ridiculous things in it, but they're pretty great. And it's like, it's obviously kind of it's not a big budget movie, but I feel like there's enough stuff in it, like enough small weird attention to detail that it's like, it's not just like a laughable movie. There's like, oh, this is actually, there's some thought into this. Like at one point, the first time he finally transforms from the chimp to the guy in the gorilla suit, it's like, oh yeah, that's silly. It's no longer a chimp anymore. But then they kind of do say something like, what did he say? It totally changes what they are, or something. It's like, oh yeah, they're acknowledging, and they know that these are two different kinds of animals.
Well, on the note of the gorilla suit,
Uh-huh.
the gorilla suit is the famous George Burroughs gorilla suit, who people might know from the Addams Family. He played Gorgo the gorilla, who helps lurch out around the house at one point. But for our purposes, it's important. First of all, George Burroughs is not in the suit himself in this movie. It's a British stuntman, whose name I thought I wrote down. Paul Stockman.
Paul Stockman, okay.
Who did not take good care of the suit. George Burroughs was furious when he got it back, and like the mouth mechanism, which we were talking about when we were watching the movie, was broken, so like the lip wouldn't curl back when he lowered his jaw and stuff.
Yeah, when that's like your bread and butter, that's kind of frustrating.
And so George Burroughs' gorilla suit is famous not just for the Addams Family. He was the robot monster, or the Roman in Robot Monster.
Maybe the most famous or infamous of all the gorilla suits.
I remember when you showed me the art
Uh-huh.
for the podcast, and I saw the Roman was on there.
Yes.
This is a bit of trivia I've always had in my mind, and so I saw the Roman on there, and for a second I was like, it's not really a giant monster.
I thought that as I drew it too.
But first of all, it just looked so good. It looked so good among the group there.
Yeah.
And then also I was like, well, there's the Conga connection. So
You're right. So all full circle.
If anyone is, like, Roman's not a giant monster, it's like, well, sure he is. In a roundabout kind of way.
That's right.
So,
Just think of him as a character, and he is playing
That's
the
right.
gorilla in this, yeah.
and once again, thank you for our wonderful cover art.
Well, of course.
We've actually, in the listener correspondence we've gotten, that has been one of the most brought up things.
All right, cool.
That your cover art is very good.
Well,
And it is.
thank you. I appreciate it.
And you can buy you can buy a t-shirt with that cover art on it at Record All Monsters TeePublic store with the link in the description. You can also buy my much worse designs.
It's still charming.
It's thank you.
Yeah, of course.
But monkeys. Back to monkeys.
Back to monkeys.
Back to monkeys.
Something we were saying, and we weren't sure, so if anyone knows, right, Robert, but we were curious if people who had like gorilla suits, just curious, like for him, for instance, do you think that he had a passion for gorilla suits and like just wanted to make one himself anyways and then found his way into movies, or was it like a way for him to make money? We're just curious, like, because it's such a bizarre thing and it's such a trend that exists. Like, we're here talking about, like, there's such a thing as gorilla movies, like gorilla suit movies. So if anyone knows what came first, what is this?
Well, and there's like a whole thing of gorilla actors,
right?
Like if there isn't a union of gorilla actors, I would be surprised.
Right.
There is a website I found when we were talking about some of this called HollywoodGorillamen.com.
Okay.
And a little bit of the research I did on there, very half-hearted research while we were watching the movie. George Barrows did build this suit, but to what end, for what purpose?
Yes, why?
I could not discover.
Yes, that's the thing I think is so interesting, and like why these movies are so, well, just one of the aspects, but it's like such a bizarre thing to be a trend, and specifically like there's different people in studios get their hands on monkey suits, and it's like, okay, we got to make a movie about this, right? And
it's wonderful. I wish there were more monkey movies.
Yeah.
Like, again, I built a whole game for this show around ape movies. I love ape movies dearly, and there need to be more. And this one is absolutely cuckoo bananas. And I think that's why I love it so much.
Yeah.
A couple things of note. The Professor Tagore, I think is how they say it. My brain wants to pronounce it Tagore, but I know that's right.
Yeah, right. That's not the British way.
No. He's a vaguely Middle Eastern scientist who Michael Goff, our protagonist, has killed by Conga.
Conga's hands burst out behind his cabinets.
In a surprisingly effective scene.
Yeah.
That is still absolutely ridiculous.
That's what we were saying earlier. It's like it is ridiculous, but there is enough to it that it's like I kind of believe this somewhat.
Yeah, you jump a little bit,
yeah,
and then you go,
yeah.
But he's actually an actor of Middle Eastern descent from Cyprus, which was shocking.
Actually, now we're saying this. Go on.
No, that was all I was going to say.
Because you were looking him up too. Because we were like, "What is this guy from?" Because he looks familiar, and we found that he's in some of the Hammer mummy movies.
Yes.
And when you say that, now all of a sudden I'm remembering whenever I watched that over Halloween this last time. I watched it with a friend, and we looked him up then too. And it was like, oh, he's actually from somewhere in the Middle East. So that's like. When we watched it this time, you looked at it back. I said, "Oh, thank goodness, that's at least something." And just now remembering, oh yeah, I actually already did that with the exact same actor somewhere.
It's just refreshing. Like, I am a Brownman, as Courtney and I say.
Right.
So it's one of those things you like grow up with, and you just kind of
right.
And like. I did a quick look, a mini-sode last week on the movie Dinosaurus, which takes place in the Mexican Caribbean. And there's a bizarre mix of actual Hispanic people and people in brownface. And it's very strange.
And sometimes in this era, people who are already brown still get brownface. Yeah, like, that's not like...
Well, like Rita Moreno in West Side Story.
Exactly,
they were like,
right.
You're dark, but you could be darker. How are people going to know you're not white?
Right. Yeah. Well, also actually, as we're watching it too, at the very beginning of it, when he's just getting back from being in Africa and they're at the airport, and he's talking to all the reporters and stuff, and they start talking about natives, and anytime that gets brought up, it's always like, oh yeah. It's weird because it's like the idea of natives is almost like, as a kid, I would hear that thing. It's like this exotic kind of idea of natives, and it's like I think anyone from anywhere is a native of that place. So that's not necessarily like a bad thing, but when it indicates only people who wear grass skirts or something, it's like that's not what being a native is, right? Yeah. But so I was like, oh, this kind of makes me feel a little weird. But then like instantly they start talking about, the reporters ask something about like civilized, how's it feel to be back in civilization? And he responds like, what do you mean by civilization? And it's like, oh well, I was just thinking, kind of critiquing all this stuff, and then not that there couldn't be still, it doesn't
more nuance.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's a perfect example or anything, but it's like, oh, again, at least you are fighting back with like, oh, it's the civilized world, and he's like, well, what do you mean by civilization?
And, well, like especially like it would have been nice if the villain of the piece wasn't the person saying it.
Yeah, right. But even then, I don't know. I think that not that only villains learn good things, but I think that maybe if you look at it as the person who's the outsider, and he comes back to the place he's from, and just normal people think that's what people think is. There's a hierarchy to places where people are from.
Right. Well, that's something that I realize now as an adult has always attracted me to monster movies. I couldn't really put it in words as a kid. But, you know, we live in America. We live in Texas. Sentiment towards, I don't like the term people of color. It like harkens back to colored people, but I also don't like the term non-white.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm Hispanic.
Yeah.
I'm visibly Hispanic. People aren't always kind here, just on the basis of that.
Right.
So, there's that outsider thing you mentioned. There's a huge, I don't know if trend is the right word, pattern maybe, I've noticed. For example, I went to see Godzilla 2019. I probably brought this up on the podcast before. I went to see Godzilla 2019 opening night, and the theater was full of black men and Hispanic men with children, wives, or girlfriends with them, dragged along
right
to see this movie.
Right, you know whose choice it was to be there. Yeah.
Because they're all wearing I was there with my sister wearing a Godzilla t-shirt.
Right, the easy way to pinpoint is who's got the merch.
And so it was just... that was kind of when I started getting the idea for this show, like what is there, you know, outsiderness that draws people to this, makes us relate to the monsters, and even someone like Michael Goff's character, Dr. Decker. None of the other human characters are compelling. I don't even remember their names.
No, right. Even the girl student that he is...
Sandra?
Maybe Sandra, yeah.
I wrote it down.
Yeah, I don't remember her name either.
I wrote it down.
Any of them.
I can't remember if the actress who plays his assistant girlfriend if the actress's name was Margot, or if the character's
I think
name
the character's name was Margot.
Yeah, Sandra. I have that in the notes. Anyway. So, final thoughts on Konga?
One of the first time I watched it, the thing that stuck in my memory the most was the man-eating plants in his greenhouse.
Yes.
So cool. And that was another one of the things too. I feel like in a lot of really cheap movies, you would just have one. But there's like 3 different variety or so of like these cool, obviously very fake, but really coolly. They move, they feed on flesh and stuff.
And there's like 2 or 3 of each of them too.
Right. Yeah. There's multiple of them. And so yeah, that to me that was like something that stuck out. And I was like, how do I make these? Because I want to have them somewhere in my house somehow if I can get my wife to agree.
Have you done any art on the Konga plants?
No, I need to at some point. I'm sure because I do a lot of like tropical stuff too, or like kind of adventure stuff, so that even if it's in the background somewhere, I feel like they can sneak that in somewhere. That'd be great. And they're very well designed. They look cool.
Now, I think I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure I'm not right. I'm pretty sure that Marcel Delgado's just on my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I read somewhere, and again, I'm putting all these qualifiers in front of it.
Right, he can be wrong.
That Marcel Delgado was involved in some way with the creation of those plants,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's sculpting or designing or doing the actual prop building.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
I mean, that would be cool.
That would be neat.
I feel like it seems like in the realm of something he would design.
Well, at the same time, like he did the bird props for the birds
Mm-hmm.
and various of the magical things on Mary Poppins.
Right.
So we just talked about Marcel Delgado in Dinosaurus last week. That's why I put Dinosaurus as a quick look in between these two episodes.
Nice.
Because it really is a bridge. That's what those are for. Don't skip them.
Yeah, that's, I mean, totally different, but it is like that aspect of this movie is like almost the prehistoric monster aspect meeting like the monkey monster aspect, because they got these prehistoric man-eating plants that he brings back.
Yeah. No, this movie is just a ton of fun.
Yeah.
I think I put this in the essay. I will, give people like a heads up, content warning. They shoot a cat. You don't see it. It's off screen. But he pulls a gun, and then they cover the dead cat with a towel. And another content warning. He physically assaults his female student.
Yes, he very much. In a way that we were saying too, it's like it doesn't even look like he's enjoying. It's like no one's getting anything out of a kiss like that from either side.
There's no nudity or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a full-on rape scene.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God.
He's going for it.
He's going for it. He's holding her very tightly and like, I don't even think kissing her. It's more like he's pecking her with his face.
Very fast, like all over. Yeah. At one point, she holds him off with her hands like by his lips. It's like, just give up, bud.
She's like, I'm not ready to work with you.
Yeah, right. There's so much more I have to learn. It's like, that conversation's changed. He's not talking about that anymore.
No, but that's it for our thoughts on Conga. For now. Mm-hmm. We may come back. We probably won't. But we're going to take a quick break. You'll hear an ad, probably for something. Nathaniel, do you have anything you want to plug?
I mean, you can always you can always find me on Instagram. My Instagram is Nathaniel Ross Smith, my full name. That's all I got going on, really.
All right, and we'll plug you again at the end of the show. We're going into an ad, and then we'll be back with this episode's edition of the Record All Monsters game show, Batman or Not Man.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, host of Record All Monsters, and this is an ad for Anchor. That's right, an ad for Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. I was super intimidated to start this podcast until I heard about Anchor, and there are a number of things that made me feel more at ease to begin. First of all, it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. They distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on multiple platforms, including whatever one you're listening to. And you can make money from your podcast easily with no minimum listenership. All you do is enter your information. Anchor takes care of the rest. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. This is the mandatory call for action that I have to read out now. But it's true. You can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I've been Robert Kelly, host of Record All Monsters, and this has been an ad for Anchor.
Conga. Not since King Kong has the screen exploded with such mighty fury. Defying bullets, bombs, rockets, standing 100 feet tall, sending an entire civilization into panic. Conga, in color and spectramation.
Okay, we're back with Record All Monsters and our special guest, Nathaniel Ross Smith.
Here I am.
I will entertain you.
Thank you.
Alright, so today's game is called Batman or Not Man. Let me explain. Today's movie stars British genre film icon Michael Gough, who appeared in several Hammer horror movies, episodes of The Avengers and Doctor Who, BBC Shakespeare productions, and numerous other starring and character roles in nearly 200 productions over 65 years. But you probably know him best as Alfred Pennyworth from the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher movies of the 90s. That tenuous connection was just enough for me to justify making this episode's game all about Batman, who in his 80-year career has had some flat-out stupid adventures.
Yeah.
So stupid, in fact, you'd swear I was making them up. So I did. I made up some of them. The rest are real Batman stories from across his many media appearances. There will be no Bat prizes or Bat penalties.
That's fair.
So, if you believe that the story I am summarizing for you actually appeared in Batman media,
Okay.
say Batman. And if you believe I'm lying to you, which is very probable, say Not Man.
Okay.
Alright, so here we go. Are you ready to begin?
I am as ready as I will ever be.
Okay, that was a rhetorical question. Batman is abducted by an alien to help stop another alien race from invading his home planet. The alien abductor wants to be his planet's Batman and dresses in a multicolored batsuit.
Batman.
Batman. It is a real, very famous Batman story.
Is that the one with the rainbow suit?
Yes. It's from 1958 called Batman, the Superman of Planet X. I was able to find information, not information, on this story, like its writer, who was France Heron, who was not a bird, and was drawn by Dick Sprang, whose name I will not make fun of.
Fair enough.
Now, you are an artist as well as a musician. So
I know some of Dick Sprang's work.
I figured you might.
Yeah.
So.
I can't think of... I know his name more than I can pinpoint. I mean, obviously we just talked about, but I know I've looked at his stuff before.
Right. Alright, next question. The Joker steals a gem from the Gotham Museum that turns out to be a mystical link to either an alternate reality or past life, it's never clearly explained, where he and Batman are warring medieval chieftains. Is it Batman or Not Man?
I'm going to say Not Man just because I don't remember seeing a cover for that ever.
It is Not Man.
All right.
I made it up.
That sounds like very likely it could be one, though.
If it had been real, it would have been an unusually light story for the mid-70s when it was published. So you're 2 for 2.
All right.
I think these games have gotten easier. The past few guests have been getting them. We gotta fix that.
Gotta make them more difficult. Gotta stump us.
Alright, next question. Batman subs in for a kidnapped quarterback while Robin looks for the missing athlete. There's a bunch of stuff about crooked football coaches betting on the game too. Robin saves the quarterback and Batman scores a touchdown. Batman or Not Man?
That to me sounds like it doesn't sound like an early one because they were much darker and more pulpy. I'm gonna say it's Batman. Is that Batman?
That is Batman.
When was it?
That was actually in Batman number 4.
Number
from
4.
1940.
Cool. Okay, I was gonna guess sometime in the 40s.
So, it was called Touchdown for Justice.
Of course.
You're 3 for 3. You got 2 more
All
questions.
Right.
You've already won.
Well, it helps that I spend too much time looking at old comic stuff.
All right. Bruce Wayne is shanghaied by a brutal sailor he hired to hunt down a white whale that has been sinking merchant ships he owns a stake in.
Okay.
It turns out to be an insurance fraud scam by one of his business partners. Batman or Not Man?
I'm going to say Not Man.
It is Batman.
Oh.
It's real. This was the second story in Batman number 9, cover dated March 1942. The fourth story in that issue was about Santa Claus.
A classic. You don't see many Batman stories about Santa Claus these
I
days.
know, though. I believe in the current DC Comics timeline, Santa is real.
Mm-hmm.
And every year he goes to Planet Darkseid to leave Darkseid a lump of coal. And
he deserves it, let's face it. Anyone in the DC universe deserves it.
Really, let's see Zack Snyder do that.
Right.
Okay?
If that's not in the Snyder Cut, I still don't want to watch it.
Not my Santa. All right, final question. Again, 3 and 4. You don't even need this.
Okay.
But we're going to do it anyway because...
It's nice to have no pressure, though.
Right. Alice in Wonderland, but with Batman instead of Alice.
Uh-huh.
Like an actual 1-for-1 where Catwoman is the Cheshire Cat and the Joker is the White Rabbit and the Riddler is the March Hare. Batman or not man?
I'm going to say Batman.
It is not man. At least I couldn't find one. But I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, and honestly, I was going to give you this point no matter what.
Cool. I don't remember a Batman one, but I feel like that premise has been taken. Actually, this is not related at all. Other than bizarre, weird movies, there's a movie that my brother and I watched from the 90s called Mir. What is it called? Dang it. Something with Mir. But the whole premise is this little girl, and she moves into this new house, and there's a mirror, and she steps into the mirror like Alice in Wonderland, and goes to this weird, bizarre planet where there's these huge talking ducks, and they want to steep her for tea. They want to make tea out of her. And we watched the trailer of it the other day, and in it, the narrator says, in the charming tradition of Alice in Wonderland. It's like, this is not you can't just rip off Alice in Wonderland and say, in the tradition of Alice in Wonderland. Well, that's a little... So many things have done that. I know there are comics where it's like, yeah, this is just Alice in Wonderland.
Well, and it's, first of all, the movie we watched today, the tagline is, not since King Kong has there been such a spectacle on the silver screen.
Right.
And it also credits itself as an original idea.
Can't have both.
No, you cannot. But what's funny is they actually paid RKO's licensing fee to use the name King Kong so they could say in their advertising.
Oh, gotcha.
Even though they didn't use King Kong at all.
Yeah.
They just said, not since King Kong.
I feel like, honestly, they probably made a lot of money just off of that, of using King Kong in ads.
Probably.
There's so many of those old horror show,
right,
like midnight spook show things that mention King Kong.
Well, and so a decade later, decade and a half later, when they made the 70s King Kong, there was a Korean giant ape movie called Ape.
Okay.
Which is an acronym for Attacking Primate Monster with the E capitalized.
You're right. The second to last letter,
yes,
yeah.
We are going to cover that.
Cool.
Don't you worry. We're getting there. It's going to be a while, but we're getting there.
Ape will be covered.
Ape will be covered. I bought the Blu-ray recently.
Nice.
It looks better than it should. But they put in their advertising not to be confused with King Kong, which actually got them in more trouble. And for the longest time, there's a Boris Karloff movie called Ape, which I believe is also an acronym. And for the longest time, I thought these were the same movie.
Yeah.
Until I saw the Boris Karloff one, and I was like, wait, this doesn't look like what I thought it was.
Right. Not the same movie.
Not the same movie. Very different.
This is one last full circle thing that is only maybe relevant to me, but earlier the other day, I think maybe today, I was looking at Instagram, and there's this artist I follow named Wilfredo Torres, and he does DC stuff, and he had drawn some little warm-up sketches of Darkseid, and someone asked him who he thinks of when he draws Darkseid, and he said Boris Karloff, and it's like, that's like the perfect answer. It makes so much sense. Really? So Boris Karloff, Darkseid, here we go, all together. Go.
And another time, I just remembered in The Long Halloween, we're not introduced to, but the Batman villain, the Mad Hatter, is featured. Who's very completely Alice in Wonderland inspired.
Right.
He's featured briefly, and Catwoman quotes very briefly from Alice in Wonderland when she basically tackles him. And I think that may even be the idea where I got the question from.
Gotcha.
And I'm honestly surprised that I couldn't find a one-for-one Batman retelling of Alice in Wonderland.
Yes.
Maybe you could say Arkham Asylum, The Serious House on Serious Earth is. If you do, I think you're a nerd.
Right. If you know what we're talking about still.
Yeah. And that's fine. That's fine. It's okay to be a nerd.
Yeah. It makes life interesting.
I literally have a podcast devoted to giant monster movies. I did laundry the other day. I have like 25 giant monster t-shirts in general. I'm wearing a shirt that's just a picture of Guillermo del Toro right now. It's just a picture of Guillermo del Toro holding his Oscars.
Academy Award winner.
So, Nathaniel, one more time, where can people find you on the internet?
You can go, best thing is my Instagram, it's Nathaniel Ross Smith. I do have a website that's the same thing, nathanielrosssmith.com. You spell Nathaniel weird, it's A-E-L instead of I-E-L. But if you look for me, you'll find me somewhere. Or you won't, I don't know, but that's fine. We'll cross paths some way.
There will be a link to, I think, either your Instagram or website.
Cool. My website is like out of date and I don't keep up with putting things on there like I should.
But I'll definitely do your Instagram.
Sure, go for it.
And that's all you'll hear here. There'll be a little noise. It's probably going to go like boom, something like that. And then you'll hear me tell you where you can find us. So we did it. We watched Conga. We talked about it for around half an hour. And now you can reap the benefits. I did this for you specifically, so you should feel pretty good about that. So, what's coming up next for Record All Monsters? Well, next week I think I'm going to take a break. Maybe another look at what's happened for Kongzillathon, but getting this week's episode out was a bit of a mad dash, and I'm pretty tired. But there's going to be something in the feed, so don't worry about that. The week after that, we'll be talking with Chris MacDonald from GargantuCast, and that was a good conversation. I'm looking forward to playing that for you guys. Oh, you know what? Next week, I think we're going to do a mailbag. Courtney, are we going to do a mailbag next week? Yeah, we're doing a mailbag next week. So there you go. That tells you everything that you need to know. Still no word on the Rondo Noms. But again, I appreciate everyone who nominated us. I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode. This is a movie I enjoy a great deal. It's fun to share with people, and I'm so glad I got to share it with all of you. So, until next week when we answer some more of your mailbag questions, remember that monsters are your... Wait! Don't remember that yet. Don't remember that yet. Because you can find Record All Monsters on Facebook by searching Record All Monsters Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Monsters Record. You can find us on Instagram at recordallmonsters.pod. And you can reach us through email at recordallmonsterspod@gmail.com. I'm tired. I'll see you next week. Remember that monsters are your friends.